Hello, everyone, and welcome to Session 3 of the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. My name is Randie Henderson, and I am one of the Black Feminist Reading Circle members of this online group. This session runs from January 20th until June 2nd and includes 2 week-long breaks. Our democratically selected reading material is Harriet A. Washington's book, Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to the Present. Our book group meets each Tuesday evening from 6:30 to 8 on the Google Plus Hangouts on Air platform. You may find the Global Black Feminist Reader Circle on Google Plus, YouTube, and Facebook, and always feel free to join us in reading our story together.
Welcome everyone to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. We are here on Google Plus each Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are currently in Session 3, reading our 3rd book, Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to the Present. And you can learn more about us at our community page on Google Plus. or our archived videos on YouTube or on our Facebook page. This session is running through June 16th, 2015, which means we are coming on down the road. And tonight, we are going to be reading Chapter 13, Infection and Inequity, Illness as a Crime. My name is Michelle Odom. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Reading Circle, along with Randie Danielle Henderson, and I'm located in Brooklyn, New York.
Hello, my name is Randie and I am watching from Atlanta. And I'm again happy to see everybody tonight.
My name is Venita Walker and I'm joining you from Connecticut. Welcome to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle.
Hey everyone.
Adhere.
Georgette Moses, participating from Columbia, South Carolina. And I'm glad my power came back on. So I can join you all.
Yes, hi everyone. Hope you're feeling well. I'm calling you from Utah. Oh, I'm Kim Brandon, and I'm in New York also.
I'm Joel Jones from Charleston, South Carolina. How's everybody doing?
We good.
Good.
Summary. In Chapter 13, author Harriet A. Washington offers an overview of public health responses to two major contagions, tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS. She highlights the ways in which these responses have played out very differently for African Americans and our children than for whites, including use of containment therapy or hospital imprisonment to force victims to adhere to a particular schedule of medication, the use of Black babies and children as research subjects to discover vaccines and cures when they have been orphaned or come under control of the state, and lack of interest in drugs that appear to primarily hold promise for Blacks. She includes examples to illustrate how biased research, inequitable and inhumane policies, and dangerous abuse of powers have shaped the uncomfortably close relationship between African Americans and infectious disease. Unhealthy places and decadent times infect us by their contagion.
Containment therapy. In April 1992, 34-year-old Milton Ellison made the front page of the New York Times after being unshackled. They had me chained to the bed for 3 weeks, he told the Times. Ellison was not held for assault, rape, or murder. His crime was more subtle. He had tuberculosis and had not complied with his doctor's orders to take medication. He was jailed not in a cell at New York City's Rikers Island Prison, but in an Orange County, New York hospital. Health officials had summoned sheriff's deputies who transported him to the hospital, where his wrists and ankles were shackled to a hospital bed, and he was given his medication under the observation of not doctors but deputies. After his weeks-long ordeal, Ellison, who was a schizophrenic, asked, "Why was that necessary? If I were ill, I couldn't go anywhere." Question A. Today there is a 72-hour hold for mental patients to be assessed and treated if warranted. Do you agree that an infectious person who is indeed not responsible should be locked up?
Would you like to answer that, or what you think about that question?
What do I think? And I saw this question, that's why I wanted to read it, but I don't agree that an infectious person who is indeed not responsible should be locked up, only because, well, mainly because I don't think you have to lock people up if you adequately explain to them what's wrong, especially in a way that they understand. And in Milton's case, Harriet stated that he was schizophrenic, so obviously he probably was a little paranoid about how he was feeling, or probably about the medication that they had asked him to take in the first place. And I think that when you explain somebody, and what she's been stressing in this book, informed consent, if you actually really told them what was going on, you wouldn't have to lock them up. And mental patients, you just have to be, in my opinion, especially, I don't know, gentle, or like, you can be firm, but there's a way to treat somebody and not make them feel like they're prisoners. And a lot of times, I know in terms of ADHD medicine and medicine for bipolar disorder, a lot of people say that the medicines make them, feel dead, or feel really, lazy, like it affects them, and people aren't really listening to how these medicines are affecting people. So I don't agree.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I feel like in his case, since he was paranoid schizophrenic, he had to be contained. I think in the book, it started off with her calling it the dot treatment. Is African Benjamin George, I said. He said that some patients had to be observed by a nurse in order to confirm that they're taking their medications. Due to the fact that he had schizophrenia, it's a serious and severe mental disorder, whereas you hear voices. And by him being a paranoid schizophrenic, he probably he didn't comply with taking the medication, and he needed to be constrained. It's not nice, and it doesn't feel good to. I mean, he could have been. I don't know. Maybe she didn't indicate shackles that were used on him. I'm sure they didn't chain him down to the bed, but he had to be contained in the bed in order to receive his treatment. And that's understandable. I think if I was a doctor or a nurse dealing with a person that was severely disorientated, I think that sometimes you do have to use some form of control. It doesn't have to be like he has to be stuck in a seclusion cell and shackled in a straitjacket, because he doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Because he's not Jack the Ripper, but he needed some help in order to take his medicine and to get his treatment.
Anybody else?
I just think that when you have to use forms of constraint like that, it's due to lack of education. And I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the system in terms of dealing with mental patients, or patients with mental illnesses, because it's always been something that people have dealt with, and institutionally nobody really wants to learn how to really deal with people who are paranoid, or who have these mental issues. And if we've spent as much time as we should on learning how these people are when they are sick in the head, then you would need to use such forms of constraint. If you really studied it and knew, and I understand, like, with people who have schizophrenia, a lot of times, they do hear voices, but there are a lot of things that provokes the paranoia in patients, and I don't think that shackling or using like forcible constraint, I think that perpetuates that anxiety, which perpetuates the schizophrenia and the voices.
Well, he was actually, let's take the case and go back to what his name was, Ebb, when he was I think the guy who lost his leg, and they were experimenting with him, and he got up and walked out of the hospital. Well, I mean, it was common sense. I mean, he still had his common sense enough to know that these doctors were experimenting with him. This man, I don't think he was in a position to determine whether they were trying to help him or hurt him.
If I may, the truth is this country has always recognized people that have mental illness, if they're recognized at all, as being less than. If you're in this country and you are not perfect because you do not have an illness that is visible to the rest, you are less than. So they treat them like they are less than. There's not been enough training or anything else put into handling mental patients that may have difficulties understanding or restraining them. It's just nothing new. And they just don't respect them as humans. You know that.
I know.
It's always been. So it's, I don't agree that you should handle a mental patient in that way. But in our country, once again, if you do not fit in the so-called norm, if you don't have a cut down in front of you, no one really cares. And it's disgraceful because they're human. And there's a way to handle everyone.
And I agree with you 100%. I'm sorry.
Oh.
And obviously there was some prejudice against him by him being sick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what they call it in California, 5150, and...
I was just going to say really quickly, like if a schizophrenic person walked into the apartment right now, I, of course, would use force, or whatever I had to do to get this person. Now, I'm not saying that I would take that moment to try to figure out how to help him, or help this person. I'm just saying that I would also recognize that in me using force, that I obviously don't know how to handle this person, and I think that's the step that institutionally the government hasn't taken in terms of dealing with mental patients or people with mental illnesses.
Well, of course, if they're a direct threat to you, and the threat is unprovoked, and you don't expect it, you're going to defend yourself against anyone.
Right.
But in a medical environment, you would think the professionals are trained to handle people, all types of people with all types of illness with dignity. And that's the key word. In a humane fashion. I'm done.
And that is sorely missing, and part of it is lack of training, and part of it is just overall lack of resources. We're facing a doctor shortage, nurse shortages, and really what we're talking about in this section of the book that makes the critical difference is Black people and poor people. Mm-hmm. There are mentally ill white people of means who manage to get better treatment. So really that the Milton Ellison story is about how Black and poor, especially poor people, are treated when they have a mental illness and when they're not capable of adhering to a particular schedule of medication. And his example is schizophrenia. But, there are all different kinds of mental illnesses, some of which are really, which really do render you incapable of taking care of yourself or being responsible. But because the system for poor people is so under-resourced, then nobody there is capable or willing of taking the time and energy to sort of sort out who's who. So,
I see what Randie is saying when she says the deputies were standing over him and treating him, and probably, that was a bit extreme because then you're saying you're criminalizing this person. Perhaps it should have been a nurse, and he should have been been treated with some dignity. I mean, just to have the deputy standing over you, I wouldn't appreciate that whatsoever, no matter what condition I'm in. Had 5 babies. I wouldn't want the deputy standing over me while I'm, giving birth.
right.
But it does happen. It happens to women in jail.
Right.